Hey guys, this is Kenjido and welcome to another PaintShop Pro video. Today we're going to go over how to replicate the comic book-like effect. So for this first part, I'm just speeding it up to get past the part where I'm experimenting a little bit with how I want the background to look. Ultimately, I ended up with a colorized sort of flat version of the background. I've already separated the subject in a separate layer from the background, and this is just a matter of applying selections, and I didn't really want to have parts of the video showing that because it's tedious and it's already been covered in a lot of different ways. So we're starting off with the subject separate so we can focus on the process of making him look comic book. So before we jump into that process of making the subject look like that comic book effect, one thing to keep in mind is you want 2 copies of your original image to do this, and partly because the first set of manipulations we're going to apply are going to apply to the entire image, and we'll eventually need to have the original image to bring back in later. So make a copy and start off with that copy. So the first step in creating that comic book look is to decrease the color depth of the image. And so the way we can do that is by going to the image menu, selecting decrease color depth, and choosing X color option. What this one does is it allows us to set exactly how many colors we want to reduce it down to. And I'm, in this example, wanting to bring it all the way down to the teens. And what this does is it reduces all of the gradients, all of the many different colors and luminance values that give us all of that smooth transition, and try to create solid lines of color that are much more cartoon effect. Now this is just the beginning of that, and we'll have to use some other tools to sharpen up those contrast points. So after you pick your color depth number based on how the image looks, you can hit OK. Now that we've reduced the color depth, we want to bring it back so that we can actually work with that image with our original image. So we're going back to image, increase color depth, and bring it back to the 8-bit color that it originally started with. So what you'll see is at this stage, by increasing the color depth, we've already kind of brought some of that detail back, and some of the grain and grit from decreasing the color depth has gone away, but we still want to try to smooth that out a little bit more. So now we're going to go to Adjust, Add Remove Noise, and choose Edge Preserving Smooth. And it's going to be, because of the size of the image, the max value that we can go. And then we're going to chase that with some more Add Remove Noise and apply Median Filter. Now this one has a much stronger effect, but it's going to smooth out a lot of those lines between the different colors where it was a little bit grittier. And you'll have to play with the number to get the look you're looking for. Some manner of detail, but mostly smooth colored lines. We'll be bringing back full detail later in another layer. So now we can just use the magic wand to remove the background once again. So now we've finished working with the first copy of one of our images, and now we're going to bring back the second copy, or the original image, and we're going to combine those two together. So now we're back with the image where we had originally adjusted the background, and we're going to paste our first copy as a new layer. Unfortunately, because of the way it imports it, we'll have to realign that layer, but once they're right on top of each other, now we can start applying different effects. Next, what we're going to do is grab the layer that has the original image in it, and we're going to make a copy and pull that all the way to the top. Next, we're going to apply a threshold onto that image, and this is where all the detail comes into play, the high contrast detail. And this is pretty much the effect that is used by all the comic book style approaches. So by adjusting the threshold, you can identify where you want that pure black detail to appear, where do you want that high contrast to occur. And sometimes threshold won't get you exactly what you want, so it may take multiple layers and multiple threshold adjustments, and you'll have to kind of blend them manually and figure out where do you want detail, where do you not want detail. I'm just going to use one iteration of it just for simplicity, but applying threshold and then doing the blend layer of multiply is what gets you that overlay of the dark and fine detail on top of your bit color depth reduced image. So one thing you'll notice at this stage is that with the bit color depth that we've changed, it's kind of messed up the original color of the image. So what we're going to do is take that layer and then change its blend layer to Luminance. That way it'll maintain the fidelity of the painterly look, but it'll take on the original color of the lower layer. So the final step then is to isolate certain areas where if there's a little bit too much grit, a little bit too much speckling going on with the threshold, that you can select those regions and then apply median filter. And by applying median filter, you can now smooth out even those shadows to make it look more like it's hand drawn rather than just, image edited like we're actually doing here. And I would caution against doing it in very fine detail areas like the face, but in areas like legs or other large portions where the shadow or the lines are don't have a lot of detail, it works out really well. And there you have it. That's my take on the comic book effect. I think almost all of them, like I said, use the threshold overlay approach. I think the few parts that are unique to the approach that I just presented are using the color depth reduction and smoothing process to try to make the colors internally also look a little smoother and more hand-drawn like. The final effect is going to be highly dependent on what image you start with and how you adjust some of the small settings here and there, but generally I wouldn't say this is meant to try to look exactly like a Marvel comic book, but it just has a comic book sort of look. And to recap, you'll have to start off with 2 images. For the first image, you want to reduce the color depth, then bring the color depth back. If necessary, apply some smoothing, whether by edge preserving smooth or median filter. Then bring the original image back in, use a copy of that and apply threshold to be able to get the nice contrast and dark detail, and then apply a luminance filter on your first image to be able to bring the original color back in but still maintain the painterly sort of luminance. But that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. If you want to be notified of more content, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.